So today we are going to be going over the short story The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and we are going to be looking at the think aloud and talk to text strategy, which I'll demonstrate for you guys just a little later into the presentation. So we're first going to start with a bell ringer. Has there ever been a time when you were forced to stay inside for an extended period? If so, how did you feel during and after the stay? If not, how might you imagine reacting to being forced inside for a while? So I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to think about it and talk to your neighbor about it. And then
we don't need
I think we're good.
Sure. Oh, okay. we got it. Okay. You guys want to share? What do you guys got?
Yeah, I think ours is probably the same.
Yeah.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to stay inside for an extended period of time because there were very limited options to like go outside and do things, and school was like closed and stuff.
And how did that like make you feel during that time of being like enclosed?
I feel like my reaction to that was very different than a lot of people's because a lot of people didn't enjoy it, but I kind of liked it because
I liked it.
Yeah. But I think that a lot of other people felt differently. I think I'm a rare case. How do you feel about staying inside?
I kind of lived the same life then that I'm living now.
Okay. So would you guys say your mental health changed or stayed the same or
My mental health improved.
improved?
Yeah, it's what it always is.
What it always is.
Mm.
Okay. Well, for our author of the short story we're going to be reading, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, she was born in 1860 and died in 1935. And I brought up the bell ringer of being stuck in a place because she was diagnosed with depression. And the doctors at the time thought the best thing for her would be to stay indoors, stay enclosed. She was only allowed 3 hours of active brain time, so she was not allowed to write, she was not allowed to read, she was not allowed to communicate with anyone outside her household for more than 3 hours a day. So she was forced to stay inside. At the time, she was married to Charles Walter Sedston, and he was in agreement with the doctor and he thought that's what would be best for her. They eventually got divorced after she had her first child with him. She eventually sent the child to live with him because the child was not helping her mental health. It actually made her mental health worse. So she sent the child away. And then she wrote The Yellow Wallpaper in response to being locked up and caged in her own home. Because doctors at the time just felt that that was how women should get over their mental illness, is by isolating themselves. And a quotation for the purpose of her short story is, it was not intended to drive people crazy, but to save people from being driven crazy. And it worked, because as you will see, The Yellow Wallpaper is all about this woman who is trapped within her own home, and people during the time were reading it and they just thought, no, like, how is this beneficial to women? But as you see at the end, it's just a really big power statement of you need to get out there and don't let men basically tell you what to do about your own mental health. So some title predictions that we're going to make based on the title of The Yellow The Yellow Wallpaper. What can we predict the story is about from just the title, and what might yellow represent, and what does it mean to you? So, do you guys have any thoughts?
So in terms of like what I predict from it, I feel like since we talked about like being enclosed and stuff like that, it's probably like the place or like the house that she was like felt stuck in had yellow wallpaper. That's my my prediction, and like so that like everything that happened in there, like she was like looking at the wallpaper like yellowing as she goes crazy, or as she's like stuck inside. And then what yellow represents, I feel like yellow is like typically associated with like happiness and joy and like sunshine, because like that's just like what I like always associate it with. So.
Do you have anything else to add, Henry?
Yellow could also go in the opposite direction. There are times during the decaying process where a slight yellow tinge is visible with teeth or corpse, especially.
That's what I was thinking too. When I was trying to think of like the different sides of yellow, I immediately went to like sickness and dying, but also I represent it with like sunshine and happiness. When I think about wallpaper, I do think about home. I think about peeling something away because wallpaper isn't permanent. So I think about maybe something in her life isn't going to be permanent. I just think of about the home setting and just feeling really comfortable. But as we know from her background, it might not be the case. So just some key vocab terms that I want you guys to look out for when we read through the first section of the short story. I have just a preface. If this was in a real classroom, they would have their notebooks, so I would have them write down the definitions and the key terms in their notebook, so that's what they would actually do here. But I have foreshadowing, tone, theme, symbol, and irony. Our essential question today deals with tone and symbol, but foreshadowing, theme, and irony are also literary tools that can help you figure out the tone and symbol as we go through. So I'm not going to read these to them because they would have written them down in their notebooks. So just keep an eye out for all of these, but we're specifically looking for tone and symbol in this section that we're going to read. So the focus question, which they would also write down in their notebook, is how does the think aloud / talk to the text strategy help us understand the imagery and tone in the yellow wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Now we're going to deal with the strategy today, so this is just something that you keep in the back of your head. While you're going through and highlighting, just make sure you're looking for like tone words, any images that stand out for you, but also using the other elements that we previously talked about and that you previously wrote down. This is where I would introduce the think aloud. It's hard for me to do here because I don't have a projector, but I would actually project the first 2 pages of the short story onto the board, and that's where I would personally make my annotations. I'm not going to do it here or show you because I don't have it, but I would introduce it like this. So I'm going to be reading aloud the first 2 pages of the yellow wallpaper while you guys follow along, but I want you guys to make sure you keep these things in mind while I read. Make sure you follow along with the text. I'm not actually going to do it now, but make notes of importance, make predictions, draw out your mental pictures, activate your prior knowledge, like we just went over her background, so that's a great thing to keep in mind while we're reading through the text. Come up with analogies and highlight confusing parts. So the think aloud and talk to the text is all about connecting with the text. So when you guys do it yourself, you want to be really focused and like in deep with the text. Like you want to be making connections. It's not a speed run, so you want to make sure you're really focused on it. So at this point, I would do it myself for you. I would be pretend like there would be a board, I'd be reading through, and I'd be making my own predictions. Like, for example, the first sentence is, "It is very seldom that mere ordinary people like John and myself secure ancestral halls for the summer." I would probably circle John and be like, okay, husband, ancestral halls for the summer, so they have money, he has money potentially, we're in a big fancy home, but then as it goes on, you see that the home isn't exactly what it seems to be, and I would make note of that, and then tone and imagery, I would also highlight that, so that's how like the think aloud would go. It's you reading the text and also making connections while you're reading. So I'm not going to do the teacher part for you, we're just going to
talk about the, so if we're reading out loud and like we notice a connection, do we stop when we're reading and like make that connection?
Yeah, so the think aloud is it's doing that. So you're reading, and if you have a connection, a question, if you see any of the literary terms that we talk about, then you want to stop and highlight it, circle it, make note of it. It's just you connecting with the text, like on the paper.
And our terms are symbolism and tone?
Yeah, it's symbol and tone is the main terms that we're looking for, but then there's also foreshadowing, theme, and I can't remember the other one. But, so I'm not going to do that right now because I don't have my thing. And since I didn't read the first one, you can't do the think, pair, share. So after I present from like my portion, I would have them talk to each other and create a 1 to 2 sentence summary of what we just read, and then I would have students share out the summaries to make sure that we're all on the same page, and then I would ask if they understand the talk to text strategy. So now you guys are going to do it yourself. I know I didn't demonstrate it for you, but my students in my class would know. So with your partner, so you guys are going to be using page 3 and 4. I labeled them for you. So for this, you're going to read pages 3 and 4. So what's going to happen is partner 1, just between,
Which one does less?
if you do the same amount.
Fine, I'll do partner 1.
Okay, so partner 1 is going to read page 3 aloud and make connections, highlight areas of confusion, just connect with the text, write down any mental notes you have while you're reading aloud, or say out any mental notes you have while reading aloud, and Ella's going to write them all down on her page. So you're going to read aloud and think aloud. So as you're reading, if you're like, oh, I wonder what this is, you're going to like say it. And Ella's going to write down all of your thoughts onto her paper.
What if I have thoughts? Do I just keep it
No.
to myself?
After Henry's done reading the first page, or page 3, then you switch. Then you will read page 3 aloud.
Oh, okay.
And then Henry will write down your thoughts.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then you do the exact same thing for the 4th page.
Okay.
So you're reading aloud and you're thinking aloud.
Okay.
And making those connections with the text, looking for those key terms, and just any questions you might have about the text.
Okay.
If you finish, or like, if they would finish early, then you would write a 2-sentence summary about what the 2 pages are about.
Okay.
But you guys can
Are we doing it for 3 and 4 or just 3?
just, you guys can just do it for 3 because,
Okay.
just for the sake of the video, you guys can
Okay.
just do it for 3.
So Henry, you start.
So,
So
Henry,
reading,
so then
and
you
then I
read
say
it?
what I'm thinking.
yeah, so
Okay.
as
Appropriate.
Okay. The paint and paper look as if a boys' school had used it. It is stripped off the paper in great patches all around the head of my bed, about as far as I can reach, and in a great place on the other side of the room, low down. I never saw a worse paper in my life. One of those sprawling, flamboyant patterns committing every artistic sin. It is dull enough to confuse the eye and following pronounced enough to constantly irritate and provoke study. And when you follow the lame, uncertain curves for a little distance, they suddenly commit suicide, plunge off at outrageous angles, destroy themselves in unheard of contradictions. The color was repellent, almost revolting, a smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the slow turning sunlight. It is a dull yet lurid orange in some places, a sickly sulphur tint in others. No wonder the children hated it. I should hate it myself if I had to live in this room alone. There comes John, and I must put this away. He hates to have me write a word. We have been here 2 weeks, and I haven't felt like writing before. Since that first day.
yeah, have you had any thoughts about what is happening? The story, any confusion, any areas that you think are worth highlighting?
She really hates wallpaper.
Okay, which sentence did you gather that from?
This one, and the first one,
Okay.
and the third one.
What about
All
any?
of it, really. It's really just about how much she hates wallpaper.
Okay, and then write it down how much she hates. Yeah, because we want to make sure we're writing all of our thoughts.
I mean, it's clear that she hates it just because it's the brightest and starkest reminder of where she is and what she's doing, which is nothing because she's been trapped inside of her home by doctors and late 19th century area where mental health was treated as sort of a physical illness more than a mental one, which they thought if you just threw them in a cell for long enough, it would cure it. I mean, maybe it worked out. It didn't seem like it did, but maybe.
All right. That was good.
You go and give me a minute.
Okay, give it a second. Then you're gonna just read the rest of this, and then if you have thoughts while you're reading, share them.
Okay. mental health
Yes.
was viewed. Yes. At the time. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Can you repeat that for me, Nicole?
Since that first. I am sitting by the window now, up in this atrocious nursery, and there's nothing to hinder my writing as much as I please, save lack of strength. John is away all day, and even some nights when his cases are serious. I am glad my case is not serious, but these nervous troubles are dreadfully depressing. John does not know how much I really suffer. He knows there is no reason to suffer, and that satisfies him. Of course, it is only nervousness. It is weigh on me so not to do my duty in any way. I meant to be such a help to John, such a real rest and comfort, and here I am, a comparative burden already. Nobody would believe what an effort it is to do what little I am able, to dress and entertain, and order things. It is fortunate Mary is so good with the baby, such a dear baby. And yet I cannot be with him, it makes me so nervous. I suppose John was nervous in his life. He laughs at me so about this wallpaper.
Okay, what are your thoughts on this half? Any thoughts?
Well, she's got the depression.
Mm-hmm.
That part's real. So. And
What do you think about John?
seems pretty absent, which is probably a big contributing factor to all of it. I'm more interested in the relationship she has with the baby. She has a very strange relationship with her kid.
Mm-hmm.
And judging that she later leaves the child, I'm guessing motherhood was never really an aspiration of hers.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in a way, shows that she is not blameless because, wow, she was in a terrible mental place. And she did have a terrible marriage with her husband, which at the end of the day, she did still leave her child, which is an abhorrent thing to do.
Would you say the tone is rather solemn, rather gloomy, dull, depressing?
It's gloomy, it's neurotic, slightly delusional, and at parts a little whiny. She really goes all in on that wallpaper.
I agree. That's actually not something I've ever thought about, but she is quite
a bit. There's quite a bit of self-pity.
Yeah, I agree. Perfect.
My
Just so you get something new, you can read page 4.
Oh.
Yeah, I do.
But
So
in
you
the
can-
actual thing, she would read page 3. They would go like that. And then
What I said.
Henry,
Okay.
whatever she says, you're gonna write down.
I just wrote it down. I don't
Yeah.
have the things.
Yeah.
At first he meant to repaper the room, but afterwards he said that I was letting it get the better of me, and that nothing was worse for a nervous patient than to give away to such fancies. So, right off the bat, it seems like John is insensitive and to her needs and inattentive. He said that after the wallpaper was changed, it would be the heavy bedstead, and then the barred windows, and then that gate at the head of the stairs, and so on. You know the place is doing you good, he said, and really, dear, I don't care to renovate the house for just 3 months rental. Then do let's go down the stairs, I said. There's such pretty rooms there. Then he took me in his arms and called me a blessed little goose, and he said he would go down cellar if I wished, and have it whitewashed into the bargain. I don't know what whitewashed into the bargain means. That's question mark. But he is right enough about the beds and windows and things. It is as airy and comfortable a room as anyone need wish, and of course I would not be so silly as to make him uncomfortable just for a whim. This kind of represents how she feels like she needs to lessen her issues because for her husband's comfort, which I think is a common feeling that women have in general. I'm really getting quite fond of this big room, all but that horrid paper. Out of one window, I can see the garden, those mysterious, deep-shaded arbors, the riotous, old-fashioned flowers and bushes and gnarly trees. Out of another, I get a lovely view of the bay and a little private wharf belonging to the estate. There is a beautiful shaded lane that runs down there from the house. I always fancy I see people walking in these numerous paths and arbors, but John has cautioned me not to give way to fancy in the least. He says that with my imaginative power and habit of story-making, a nervous weakness like mine is sure to lead to all manner of excited fancies, and that I ought to use my will and good sense to check the tendency, so I try. It seems like John, he doesn't look down on her. For some reason, the part that says imaginative power and habit of story making, it's condescending, but he does think she's intelligent enough to
Mhm.
I think sometimes that if I were only well enough to write a little, it would relieve the press of ideas and rest me. That's ironic because she's writing this down. But I find I get pretty tired when I try. It is so discouraging not to have any advice and companionship about my work. When I get really well, John says we will ask Cousin Henry and Julia down for a long visit, but he says he would like as soon put fireworks in my pillowcases to let me have those stimulating people about now. I wish I could get well faster, but I must not think about that. This paper looks to me as if it knew what a vicious influence it had. This tone I think is very different from page 3 because it's like a little more hopeful.
Mhm. I agree. Okay, that was good. And then I would have you guys, if I read the first 2 pages to you, I'd have you guys then write a 2-sentence summary on what you guys just read, and then I'd also have you share out a little of what you thought about the piece, just some of the thoughts you guys wrote down, but since it's just the 2 of you and I heard your thoughts, I kind of already know what you guys said. So I agree, as the story goes on, it turns into an unreliable narrator in a stream of consciousness. She starts to kind of go crazy and lose her mind, but you guys would technically see that. This is where I would have them do individual work, where you would do the exact same thing you guys just did, but for the next 2 pages, but you guys would do it on your own. I'm not gonna make you guys do it now, but you would do the same thing. I would give you guys 10 minutes. Whatever you don't finish, well, it's homework anyway, to read the rest of the story and do the same thing and so that's what would happen in individual work, and then I would have people share out their ideas for the rest of the story, and then we would have an exit ticket after the individual work, which they would write down in their journals. So the exit ticket is just the essential question, and they would answer it in your journals. So I don't know, does anyone have any ideas about the essential questions so far? I know I didn't let you guys read a lot of the story, but can you guys think of like in ways how like talking aloud your thoughts and like really viewing those elements of literature?
I think it's like interesting to hear the other person's perspective because like him and I, we had very different like interpretations, and what we kind of prioritized and thought about was very different. Like I think for me, like I was kind of looking at it as from the perspective of like a woman and like how some of the things that she's like dealing with are like issues that are still like common, and he like has a bit more of like a gruesome almost like viewpoint of it when he's talking about like but even if you like look at like our answers to the color yellow, like our answers were very different, and I think that having this and like having it so that he like I write down his perspective and he writes down my perspective gives like it like helps people to understand.
I'm curious to see how her second marriage went.
Her second marriage, not great. She actually committed suicide.
I got that.
Yeah, she actually was diagnosed with, I think, breast cancer, and then eventually committed suicide.
1800s cancer, you don't cure that.
Yeah, she didn't do well. No. But this was
because of the cancer, or was she just like had case?
I think it was more so like it was to a point where she was like, I can't. I'm gonna die eventually. Might as well.
Fair enough.
But that would be the end of the lesson, and then they would put in their notebooks for grading. But there was just a lot of stuff left out, I guess, because I don't have anything to annotate for them, and it'd be weird for me to do it here. But in the actual lesson, that's what I would do. They did the partner work. They just didn't do both pages because I feel like it's pretty straight to the point. And then they didn't do the individual work because that's also straight to the point. They just do their work, the same exact thing. But other than that, yeah, that was my lesson. Thanks.